So today I wanted to talk about my experience taking 3 praxis tests and also the 7 biggest tips I have for you if you are preparing for your praxis tests. So if you've been around here before, you might know that I've already put up a video kind of similar to this, and I put up that video I think the same day I came back from my first praxis test, which was the 5047, which is middle school ELA. I updated the description to that video saying that I passed it, and I ended up passing both the ELA and the social studies one, but I actually eventually decided to take the high school social studies one as well, and I also passed that too. I've kind of collected my thoughts a little bit better, so I will link to that first video, but I would definitely recommend watching this one, because this one will have more cohesive thoughts, I think. I'll also have every resource I talk about linked down below as well, because I know that's helpful to a lot of people. My first tip is to take notes on content even if you're not going to reference back to it. I think a lot of people don't realize that a form of studying is note-taking. So even if you don't reference back to your notes, or even if you don't make flashcards out of your notes, just the act of taking notes itself is a form of studying. And I find that I don't do a good job of referencing back to my notes, but I do a very good job taking those notes. So definitely take notes on content even if you're not going to reference back to it. If you're in a lecture, if you're still in college and you're in a lecture, take notes on that. If you are watching a video, take notes on that. And I've seen this thing recently called Scribble Notes. I haven't had an opportunity to try it out recently or yet, but it's basically where you just have a piece of paper next to you and you're scribbling down pictures, words, lines, anything to kind of have an association in your brain to the content. Note-taking is so important. Again, even if you don't reference back to it, just the act of taking notes is very, very helpful. And I found it's helpful in an instance like this where there's so much content to cover that you might not have the time, or honestly even the willpower, to go through and take very detailed notes on everything and then re-go back and study each individual thing. My second tip is to print out the ETS Practice Study Companion. I would hope this is pretty common knowledge, but ETS puts out these huge packets. They're study companions. They basically have all the information you're going to need to know on the test, and they also give some practice tests in there as well. It's a few questions. It's not a full all-encompassing one, but it gives you answers and also an explanation for the answers as well. The reason the study companion is so great is because it gives you the content categories. So for example, if you're taking the 5086, which is the high school social studies test, it'll break it down by there are 18 US history questions, there are 13 geography questions, and it does this for every single test. I've made a study guide for the elementary school subtests, and they break those down into these chunks as well. They break it into a little pie chart, which is really nice and user-friendly. They also have this section called test specifications, which is basically a long list of all of the content that could possibly be covered in the test. When I say all the content that's going to be on the test or can be on the test, I'm not saying it will be. I'm just saying it's a possibility, so it's something you need to know and research. And also, this section is not necessarily super specific. It might just say, well, I'm looking at it right now. It says, understands the struggles and achievements of individuals and groups for greater political and civil rights throughout United States history. So it's not specific in the sense that it's saying civil rights for African Americans, civil rights for women. It's just saying civil rights throughout US history. But this is a really, really good starting point if you just have no idea how to start studying or where to start looking at research for this test. I also personally recommend printing it out. I didn't print out the whole 50-page packet. I downloaded the PDF and then I think split up only the pages that I needed, so I ended up only printing out 5 or 10 pages. I personally work better when things are printed out and I'll actually look at it and you can write notes on it physically. Another huge thing, out of these 7 tips, this is one of the biggest things that I think helped me pass these tests successfully. Taking the ETS practice tests. So ETS, from my experience, once you register for a test, will send you a little code for one of their practice tests. All of the praxis and practice sound so similar, I'm sorry, but all of the praxis tests on ETS have practice tests online. Some of them have multiple versions. The ones that I've actively taken have only had one, so I think the ELA and social studies middle school as well as the high school social studies have all only had one version, but I think some of the elementary school ones have multiple versions, but you would have to pay for each of those versions separately. Anyway, when you register for your praxis test, you'll get sent a code for free for these practice tests, and I didn't know that at first, so I ended up getting duplicates because I bought the practice test and then registered, but I would register first because you'll get sent a free one. These online practice tests are really useful. They have a bunch of questions. I think they've ranged from anywhere from 60 to 100 in the ones that I've seen, or maybe 90. They also have some sample constructive response questions, which I found have been really helpful and honestly pretty accurate to the test. I would say this is number one in what you should do to study for the praxis tests, would be to download or purchase these ETS practice tests. If that's still not enough, I would check out some AP practice tests online, high school practice tests. This is specifically if you're doing middle school or high school. I can't imagine this would be very helpful for you if you're doing elementary school. But the ones I looked at were AP Lit, AP Lang, and AP World History. Those were the 3 AP practice tests that I looked at. I know there's some you can pay for. I just found some free ones online. I honestly wouldn't recommend paying for anything from those like sketchy websites, because there's plenty of practice tests online everywhere, and I would just spend your money on the ETS sanctioned, ETS created practice tests. Anyway, I took a look at these, I glanced at them, I kind of compared some answers. They weren't my main source of studying, but they definitely helped. So I said 7 tips. That was kind of cheating a little bit because these next 2 are basically one, but it would be to listen to podcasts while you're commuting. I have a podcast that I love. It's honestly the perfect length for my commute because it takes me 20 to 25 minutes to get to internship. It is History Hit by Dan Snow, I believe his name is, and those are very short little segments, and they're fun. They usually choose really interesting bits of history to talk about, and he usually gets people in the actual field to talk about the bits of history that the podcast is about. So podcasts are really interesting, and I think they kind of help shape your general understanding of what's going on in history anyways, and that general understanding can help you pass the test if you're taking the social studies one for either middle school or high school. I found that if I had some context for what was going on in a given time period, I didn't have to necessarily know the answer to a question to be able to get it right. Along with listening to podcasts on your commute, you could also listen to videos, listen to podcasts while you're at home, cooking dinner, doing dishes, otherwise putzing around. I really couldn't make myself sit down and watch like crash course videos. They just weren't interesting to me. I don't think they really helped me all that much. But if I was cleaning my room, I would put one on in the background instead of whatever else I would have been watching on Netflix, I don't know. I had a quick 2 to 3 minute video on one time that kind of summarized adverbs to me because I just didn't remember the specifics of that. There's a lot of really short videos that are great online to just listen to. You don't really have to watch them. They kind of act like a podcast. And then my very last helpful tip would be to check out my study guide. This is not just me trying to get people to buy my study guide. This along with the ETS practice tests online are the 2 things that I think really got me to pass these tests on the first try. In order to make the study guides, I took the practice tests and I went through the study companion that I talked about a little bit earlier and basically went through and expanded on the questions, expanded on the knowledge that you need to know. It is important to note though that the study guides that I have listed are study guides. They're not practice tests. They don't give you practice or sample questions. They just give you the information that you should have an understanding of to be able to take the test. I didn't just make these study guides and put them up just to get people of their money. I honestly used the study guides that I put up. They really are the big reason why I passed these tests, honestly. So if you're interested, I would definitely recommend you check those out. I've done each of these tips in differing amounts throughout my experience of trying to take these tests. If I had to rank them, I would definitely say ETS official practice tests, my study guide, and also the study companion. Those are the three big things. If you don't have a lot of time to study, if you're in a time crunch, those are the top three. If you have some time and you're just looking for some advice on how to best study, then obviously you can go more in depth, take those AP practice tests, watch videos and take notes, listen to podcasts, things like that. It's just a content test. There's some scenario questions, but most of my experience has been that they are content questions. These tests don't examine your preparedness to be a teacher or to be an educator, so even if you don't pass them on the first try, don't feel bad. They're honestly the most annoying waste of money ever. Okay, so if you have any other suggestions, I would love if you could share them down below. Also, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to ask. I love answering questions, and if I can help anyone take these tests and be a little bit less stressed, I would love to. Till next time.